tonight we're going to be looking at Deuteronomy 14 and 15. Still, I don't want to say trudging along, but still going through Deuteronomy. It's a rehash of what Moses has told the people, but most of the people that was over age 20 have died, so the new group that's come up, 20 and younger, may not have heard of these things, so he's reminding them and telling them. Chapter 14, verse 1. You are the children of the Lord your God, and you shall not cut yourselves nor shave the front of your head for the dead. That seems a little weird, but in that particular time, the pagans, the ones that were in that area, the Canaanites and all the ites that was out there, Perizzites and Hittites and all them, they would do different things for their dead. And one of the things was cut themselves whenever somebody died. Now the Jewish people, they do what they call Shiva. They sit Shiva. They for a week, they mourn the person. They throw ashes up on their head and rip their garments as an act of mourning. And that's not implied here. That's later on. That's some of the later portions of it. But here, it's trying to, again, set them apart from the pagans that's in the area. And they would cut themselves, either cut their bodies, cut their face. And what that does, what I kind of read on some of the other commentaries, it reminds them of their family. You know, cuts something there, okay, that's mama right there, that's for mama, you know, that they cut or whatever. Or they're shaved. Now, a lot of us are okay. We don't have the unibrow going on, but some of them have that, and they would cut their eyebrows too as a mourning process. Okay, that's what cut it on their face, because I didn't quite understand that. Shave one's head, front of one's head. So that's kind of what I read in some of them.
I have a question. If they did that for one person, and let's just say a few weeks later another one died, and they're going to shave their head again.
Yeah.
Maybe they wouldn't have any hair to shave.
Well, then it's not one or the other or both. It could be whatever they want to do.
Oh.
This is some of the customs, and he's just trying to get them out of mutilating their body.
Oh, I see.
Okay, this whole thing. Yeah. And today we look at this and we take it that the tattooing, things like that, that's mutilating your body. That's where they get some of this scriptures from some people. So, because a lot of people, I don't know if you've noticed, I've seen people, they're going to get a tattoo for their mother. You know, that was kind of the common thing. Get a heart or get a, you know, whatever. Well, today they get it for anything. Just about their favorite character or whatever they do. And it just puts it out that that's what's common. They want to be separate. Go ahead, brother.
I was thinking about how they nowadays are getting those big.
Yeah.
And when they get through their ears, they're going to be, you know.
Oh yeah, they'll be down to here. I mean, I've seen them, guys and girls both. They have big old, they pierce their ears and they keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger holes in them where you could just stick your finger through it almost.
Like that.
Yeah, they're huge. And that's what the body is, the physical body and the spiritual body is the temple of the Lord. And that's what we need to look at. How do we want to treat the temple of the Lord? Do we want to desecrate it? And that's basically what Moses was saying. And that's to keep people understanding. You want to be separated. You don't want to be like the people that's here, the Canaanites that you're running out. It says here one that was really weird. In New Guinea, some countries, like New Guinea, the mourner, especially a woman, will remove a joint of her finger. And I guess that means cut it off. You know? Or even more than one joint. So, you know, if you had a big family, you wouldn't have much of a hand, would you, after that? I mean, I don't quite get that.
You know, we laugh at it, and it
says, we may certainly mourn the passing of our loved ones, but as those who have eternal hope in Jesus, we should be different in the way that we mourn. Okay? Brother Epson, you'll read the second verse?
It says, "For you are a holy people to the Lord your God, and the Lord has chosen you to be a people for himself, a special treasure above all people who are on the face of the earth."
Okay? Again, just reminding them, and again, separate. He wants them to be holy. Holy means separated, means set apart from all these. These are a special treasure. God chose Israel through Abraham, okay, and Isaac and Jacob and all the lineage down there to be a special people, his own people. Each of these glorious privileges carried with it a responsibility for these treasures. If God regarded Israel as something special among the nations, they had to conduct themselves as something special to the nations. They had to show themselves they were set apart, because they're like, what, why are you going to do all this? So this is what he's trying to tell them. I'm going to read the next one because it's long. 3 through 21. These are the animals which you may eat. Okay, it's again telling them, and it's a little different. It's not different, but it goes into more detail than some that we learned earlier in Numbers and Exodus. These are the animals which you may eat: the ox, the sheep, the goat, the deer, the gazelle, the roe deer, the wild goat, the mountain goat, the antelope, the mountain sheep. And you may eat every animal with cloven hoofs, having the hoof split into 2 parts, and that chews the cud among the animals. Nevertheless, of those that chew the cud, or have cloven hoofs, you shall not eat these: the camel, the hare, the rock hyrax, for they chew the cud, but do not have cloven hoofs. All of those. They are unclean. Also the swine is unclean for you, because it has cloven hoofs, yet it does not chew the cud. You shall not eat their flesh or touch their dead carcasses. These you may eat of all that are in the waters. You may eat all that have fins and scales, and whatever does not have fins and scales you shall not eat. It's unclean for you. All clean birds you may eat, but these you shall not eat: the eagle, the vulture, the buzzard, the red kite, the falcon, the kite after their kinds, every raven after its kind, the ostrich, the short-eared owl, the seagull, the hawk after their kinds, the little owl, the screech owl, the white owl, the jackdaw, the carrion vulture, the fisher owl, the stork, the heron after its kind, and the hoopoe, I don't know how you pronounce that, and the bat. Also every creeping thing that flies is unclean for you. They shall not be eaten. You may eat all clean birds. You shall not eat anything that dies of itself. You may give it to the alien who is within your gates, that he may eat it, or you may sell it to a foreigner, for you are a holy people to the Lord your God. You shall not boil a young goat in its mother's milk. Now, all these we've talked about before in the lessons when we was going through Exodus. Moses was telling us in Exodus and Numbers all the different types of animals that they have. But all these that he's calling you can't eat, they are not kosher. That's what they call kosher, if it's clean. And you can kind of look at it in the animal realm. It's anything like, say, the cow, the deer, all those that chew the cud and have a split hoof. If it doesn't, you shouldn't eat it. A horse doesn't have a split hoof. It chews the cud, but it doesn't, have a split hoof. All the birds. The birds are mainly, the ones they mentioned are mainly scavengers in this particular order. Back on the other side, I think it talked about the eagles and all those too. Essentially, they are scavengers. Okay, they will eat whatever they can find. You can't eat catfish. Catfish isn't kosher. It's gotta have skin, gotta have scales and fins. Catfish has fins, but it don't have any scales. Can't have any crabfish, any shellfish, oysters, lobsters, all that's unclean to them. Now that was the Jewish people, okay? It falls into three categories: predators, scavengers, and potentially poisonous or dangerous foods, just like shellfish is. And if an animal dies, the blood is still in it, and that's one reason why it tells him don't eat the animal with the blood. Once the animal dies and the blood's in it, it's basically no good unless you drain the blood out. And what they're talking about is you find an animal in the field or along the road or whatever, in your field, you know, one of your horses or oxen, or not horses, but oxen or deer or whatever, it fell dead, you couldn't eat it. You could sell it, you could cut it up and sell it to a foreigner or give it to a foreigner, whatever you wanted to do, but you couldn't eat it because the life is in the blood, and that's what we talked about before. And then boiling a young goat in its mother's milk. This was a common pagan fertility ritual where they would get that. This also, boiling the young goat in the mother's milk is where the Jewish people can't have a cheeseburger. Okay? Because that milk that made up the cheese may have been from the cow that, you know, gave the milk, may be the mother. So they can't mix it. And we saw that while we were over there. They didn't have ice cream at meals in the restaurants because they'd have all kinds of different meats that you could eat, but they didn't have the ice cream. They had sorbets and whatever they call them, gelatos or whatever, and that's what they would eat. Okay, Iris, you want to read 22 and 23 there on page 5?
You shall truly tithe all the increase of your gain that the field produces year by year. And you shall eat before the Lord your God in the place where he chooses to make his name abide, the tithe of your grain and your new wine and your oil, of the firstborn of your herds and your flocks, that you may learn to fear the Lord your God always.
Okay. So again, it's re-emphasizing the tithe of what they bring in. If you grow wheat, if you grow barley, whatever you grow, grapes, you know, any of that, the first fruit, first harvest, you need to pay a tenth off of that, a tithe off of that. Whenever you have a firstborn calf or a firstborn sheep or chickens or whatever, they have to be given as sacrifice to the priest. They are taken there, they are part of the tithe, okay, that's given in to them. So seemingly this meant the grain left over after the grain seed was taken out, the way they interpreted it to me, which I can get that. I mean, I understand that. The tithe was then assessed on the income, not the total assets. Today people would say that's the net income. I think that's the way they would look at it. When the tithe was delivered to the tabernacle and later the temple, a portion of the tithe was enjoyed in a ceremonial meal with the Lord, and the rest of it was given to the priest. That's what we talked about a few weeks ago, that they were supposed to eat part of that meal that they gave to them with the priest there while they were there. Again, the purpose of tithing is to teach you always to put God first in your lives. It goes back to when the Passover happened and the firstborn was saved of all that painted the lintels, the doorposts, okay? Well, in order to compensate for that, this is the tithe, part of the tithe that's given to them.
You know, just a while ago when she read that, I thought about And they always knew that they could get, I mean, in other words, I know if I fear God, take care of him, he's gonna take care of me.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's awesome.
It is. Bertha, you wanna read on page 6, 24 through 27?
But the journey is too long for you, so that you are not able to carry the time tight. Or if you place where the Lord your God chooses to put his name is too far from you, when the Lord your God has blessed you, then you shall exchange it for money. Take the money in your hand and go to the place which the Lord your God chooses, and you shall spend that money for whatever your heart desires, for oxen or sheep, for wine or silver drink, for whatever your heart desires, you shall eat there before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice, you and your household. You shall not forsake the Levite, who is within your gates, for he has no part nor inheritance with you.
Okay. Now what it's saying is if they lived, they're going off into their separate areas. Okay, now they haven't chosen those separate areas yet. They will later on. But there are some going to be on the east side of the Jordan River, and then the other 9.5 tribes are going to be on the west side of the Jordan River. And wherever they set up the tabernacle, it could be a ways from where you live after you move out and build your house and whatever. Like I said, it's like almost 100 miles from north to south, maybe even longer in the original Israel. So if what he's telling you, and what they want is they want the first, should be unblemished, should be all this stuff. Well, if you have to drag a sheep 50 miles, or cattle, or whatever, they're liable to stumble and fall, or, scratch themselves, whatever. They won't be what God wants. Even though it is the first fruit, he still wants it to be perfect. So what he's saying, go and exchange it for money, for your tithe, and then bring that money to the temple, the tabernacle, whichever one, at this particular time it's tabernacle. Bring that as an offering, as their tithe offering, and give it to the church. So that's what he's telling them to do, and that makes a lot of sense. Whatever money you spend on it, you spend it for your heart's desire, but for the sheep or for the oxen or the wine or whatever drink, you shall eat there before the Lord your God, and you shall rejoice. Because again, they're going to partake in part of that offering with the Lord, with the priests. So they're bringing that in to the Levites. And also it says here, you shall not forsake the Levites who is within your gates, for he has no part of inheritance with you. What that means is they don't have any land. The land is given to them, but they don't really work it. They have places for their animals, a place, and then they have places to live, but they weren't given any land like the tribes were, individual tribes. So the tribe of Levi's, so don't forget them. That's what it's saying. And a little bit later on, we'll see that where the tithe enters into that, which is this next verse, 28, 29. At the end of every third year, you shall bring out the tithe of your produce of that year and store it up within your gates. And the Levite, because he has no portion nor inheritance with you, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are within your gates may come and eat and be satisfied, that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hand which you do. Now, they hear, you can read the commentary, but they go back and forth between whether it's the same tithe or an additional tithe or whatever. I've always understood, and if you go down to that bottom paragraph, the Jewish rabbis held that there were 3 tithes, okay? And you can read them there. The tithes for the Levites and the priests, the communal meals, and then the third year. And that third year is a third of the tax. So that'd be 10 and 10, that'd be 20%, 3%, or a third is 3 and a third.
Aren't they supposed to increase their tithing every year? I mean,
No,
at
you
the
don't.
end of third year?
No. No, what that means is you save up every third year.
Oh.
You save up some of your tithe. Okay, 10%, a tithe means a tenth. Alright? So 10%, what they say here, the rabbis said 10% was for the priests and Levites. That's like our current tithes today. 10% for the communal meals. That means where the priests and stuff and the communal meals they have. They have 9 different festivals or whatever. Save that money for that. Okay, that's part of it. And then every third year you'll have another 10%. You save up for 3 years and you'll have 10% of that. And that's for the widows, the fatherless, the aliens, the Levites. Okay, that's to help pay for them. Give them because what they're trying to do, and it later on, as we'll read in the next chapter, they don't want anybody. I mean, it's not like they don't want it. They want to have their wealth communicated through for everybody. Okay? If you're poor, you should be able to go to somebody and get something to eat if you really need something. If you're a widow, if you're an orphan, if whatever, if you're a Levite, if they need, people should save that for them. That's what it's saying. Have that available for them.
I wonder if we do ours like monthly, so.
Yeah, we're a different society. They was agrarian or farming, and so they only did it when they brought the crops in.
And we don't have to chill,
Well, I told the story once or more than once. My grandpa, he raised all different types of vegetables. He'd rent 40 acres down on the Arkansas River bottoms, and one year he brought, I don't know how many potatoes we had. We planted the potatoes. He drove his tractor and tilled the ground up and furrowed it. We had big old toe sack with pieces of potato that they'd cut up, throw them down, and we'd step on them, and then he'd come back and turn them back down. And then when we come back, at the end of the season, we'd come back and he'd plow them up, and we'd have to pick them up. He had, I bet it was as long as that bench,
wow.
a bin, and probably about 4 foot wide and about 4 foot high, filled with potatoes. Maybe more than that. But he paid his tithes out of it. In his tractor, he brought his tractor along and he lowered the front end loader and filled that front end loader up.
Sure he did.
And he took it down to the pasture and dumped it in his driveway. It was probably 500 pounds of potatoes. I mean, that's a lot, but it may not have been that much, but it was a good 100 pounds, I know. But they did that. That's what they did. You know, if they had chickens, they had eggs, they'd give them a, you know, if you had a dozen chickens and laid a dozen eggs a week, a dozen chickens, yeah, about an egg a week, you know, you give them a dozen eggs every other week or whatever it comes out to be, every 3 or 4 weeks. We don't do that today. We get paid money-wise most of the time, so we contribute our money. But we can also contribute our time, too. That's part of, you know, our time that we have. Now, strictly speaking, it says the New Testament speaks clearly on tithing, 1 Corinthians 16:4 and 2 Corinthians, but it doesn't really emphasize tithing. It's saying that one might not be strict on the Christians, but they should give in proportion to what they get. Saying that not just a tenth, but even more. Okay? There's some people, very rich Christians, very wealthy, and they give very wealthily. They give millions of dollars. And some people, you know, like the poor widow, they make their poverty level, and they give their little widow's mite, and that's to God, and that's what Jesus said. She gave more than all this guy over here. Because I mean, that may have been what she was gonna eat on for that day. She had to go without food. Who knows what it was? It says, if our question is how little, and this, I can see somebody asking this, how little can I give and still be pleasing to God? You're asking the wrong question.
That's stupid.
Well, I know, but some people, they think that way. You know, how little can I get by with?
Yeah,
Well,
they don't wanna give.
Yeah, it should be. It says when you give it, it should be with thanksgiving. It should be a pleasure to give.
Well, I hope when they ask that question, they go very guilty.
I love that part there where it says giving is a spiritual issue.
It is. It is.
That's really dumb.
Okay, in chapter 15, we go to verse 1. And this talks about slaves. At the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a release of debts. Money and slaves. Okay, money and people. And this is the form of the release. Every creditor who has lent anything to his neighbor shall release it. He shall not require it of his neighbor or his brother, because it is called the Lord's release. Of a foreigner, you may require it, but you shall give up your claim to what is owed by your brother, except when there may be no poor among you. For the Lord will greatly bless you in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess as an inheritance. Only if you carefully obey the voice of the Lord your God, to observe with care all these commandments which I command you today. For the Lord your God will bless you, just as he promised you. You shall lend to many nations, but you shall not borrow. You shall reign over many nations, but they shall not reign over you. This hits on a lesson of debt, where a lot of people get into trouble is debt. They spend more than they can afford, and then they do without. Okay? So what they're talking about is there should never be in Israel's time a 30-year mortgage, because they have their 7 years, okay, that's a sabbatical, that they have to release after 7 years whatever is there. So 6 years, and it goes back to the crops. They're supposed to work the crops for 6 years and then lay fallow for a year. Well, if you lay in fallow for that year, you don't need servants to work it. You don't need seed to plant it. You don't need all this stuff. So you really, those people are going to go that are servants to you. They're going to go hungry because you ain't got nothing to give them except the food that you've saved up. So you release them. Okay? They're no longer your servants. And they may be in your service because they wanted to be. They couldn't afford to be on their own. Okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. This is talking about the debts. But they may be in debt to you. They borrowed something from you. And after that 7 years, you say, okay, now it's yours. You don't have to give it back. Have you ever heard somebody say, yeah, I think that guy borrowed my chainsaw, and I don't know what's happened to it since, or whatever, borrowed something. My favorite, whatever. Well, in the Jewish deal, after 6 years, even though you let them have it that long, 6 years, it's no longer yours. It's kind of like possession's 9/10 of the law.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to make very many loans in year number 5 and 6.
Well, you wouldn't know. That's right. You wouldn't want to let that go.
It's kind of like on the 7th year, it belongs to me now.
It says, you shall grant a release of debts. In Israel, money was always loaned with the understanding that every 7th year, debts would be canceled.
Yeah.
So there was no long-term debt in this sense. Money could never be borrowed or owed for more than 6 years. So, to me, that means, okay, if you borrowed it, you need to pay it back in 6 years. And I think that's what it meant. There's some commentators that I read that said, well, that 7th year, you don't pay me for that 7th year. And then we pick up, 6 years, and then 7 years, 6 years, 7 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 years, when you go on to the next year. But to me, that doesn't set with what's saying here. This was an important matter. The Lord's release. Says it was the Lord's release. As Israel obeyed this command, they would never be a permanent underclass in Israel. Some might go bad through a bad period, but would have opportunity to rebuild their lives financially on a regular basis. God established an economic system wherein no one had to be chronically poor. If people would obey the Lord, He would bless, and they would not be poor. So God had laid this down for them in time for their benefit. All right? Now, just a few verses down, it says the poor will never cease from the land. And we'll read that here in just a minute. And that's true too, but it means chronically poor. People that is poor in, day out. We know that. Some people, they don't want anything, seems like.
There's some of the homeless that does that when they don't have to.
They don't have to. They could, yeah. Some of them are like that. And it says, you shall lend to many nations. If Israel obeyed and the individual citizens of Israel enjoyed the blessings of God's prosperity, then they would as a nation be prosperous. So they could lend out to other nations and still require that to get back for them.
There's a guy I knew that he's passed away now. He never worked because he didn't want the government to know where he was.
Yeah, there are some people like that.
I think they already know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to try that one, Brother Epson, or is that too long?
Is there any among you poor men
What page was
of your brother
10.
within any of the gates in your land which the Lord your God is giving you? You shall not harden your hearts, nor shut up your hand from the poor brother, but you shall open your hand wide to him, and willingly lend him sufficient for his need, whatever he needs. Beware lest there be wicked thoughts in your heart, saying, the 7th year, the year of release is at hand, and your eye, I just condemned what I said, and your eye be evil against your poor brother, and you give them nothing, and he cried out to the Lord against you, and it became sin among you, and you shall surely give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this thing the Lord your God will bless you in all your works, in all which you put your hand. The poor will never cease from the land. Therefore I command you, saying, you shall open your hand wide to your brother, to your poor, and your needy in your land.
Okay. And it sets there, it's part, in my opinion, it's part of the Adamic nature, that some people try to get by with nothing. They don't want to do anything. Some people work the system, like it's saying there. They go borrow something, they borrow it in the 5th year or 6th year, knowing that they're going to get to keep it. Or make a debt in the 5th or 6th year, that they're going to get to keep it. It's saying that shouldn't be a problem. You should still go ahead and do it. Okay, even though you know that they may be doing it for a wrong purpose. But he's not condemning those people. He's telling you should be better than that. You should go ahead and do it. All right. It says, you shall not harden your heart nor shut your hand from your poor brother. And again, this goes to who is really poor. Some people, back then they had people, I'm sure just like today, that they wanted to make quick money, didn't want to raise cattle, didn't want to raise this, didn't want to whatever. They just go from town to town. And there's some people, we're getting ready to read about it here in this minute, they couldn't do anything, so they became a slave. They got so much poor, and they didn't have a lot of money, but they had food, and the master took care of them. They had work to do and all that. So we're going to see that in just a minute. Galatians 6:10 says, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith. Our charitable giving is to begin with those brothers and sisters closest to us, though it certainly can extend outward from there. People that you have a relationship with. Okay? If you know somebody's in trouble, having problems, you need to help them if at all possible. Whether it's, something little or something big. You may be, change a tire for them or whatever. That's what we need to help them. 12 through 15, you want to read that for us, Iris? Down at the bottom, 11.
If your brother, a Hebrew man or a Hebrew woman, is sold to you and serves you 6 years, then in the 7th year you shall let him go free from you. And when you send him away free from you, you shall not let him go away empty-handed. You shall supply him liberally from your flock, from your threshing floor, and from your winepress. From what the Lord has blessed you with, you shall give to him. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. Therefore, I command you this thing today.
Okay. So, the 7th year, not only were the debts canceled, but the slaves got their debt canceled also as being a slave. They usually became a slave because either they couldn't pay for something, and they said, okay, I'll let you work it off. We hear that today, if you go in a restaurant and don't eat, they'll let you wash dishes. At least they used to. I don't know if they'll do that now. But to work the food off, to work the payment off. But it also says that they send them out with something. Don't send them out with nothing, because they don't have nothing. It's all yours. They are using your land and your, all that eating over your table. If you just send them out happy, they're going to be right back in their own position. So give them some of your food, give them some of the wine, give them some of the grain, give them some of the cattle to get started in their own venture to help them with. We don't see a lot of that today. Okay? Now maybe in families we do, but we don't see a lot outside of the family unit, doesn't seem like. Said, you should not let them go away empty-handed. God commanded generosity to the departing slave, giving him something to start his new life with. This would give the slave about to be freed hope and incentive to please his master, because they're going out on their own, trying to become, citizens just like they had. Bertha, page 12 there, 16, 17, 18.
16, 18. And if it happens that he says to you, I will not go away from you because he loves you and your house, since he prospers with you, then you shall take an owl and trust it through his ear to the door, and he shall be your servant forever. Also to your female servant you shall do likewise. It shall not seem hard to you when you send him away free from you, for he has been worth a double hired servant in serving you 6 years. Then the Lord your God will bless you in all that you do.
Okay. There are several instances that the servant really doesn't want any more than being a servant. They really enjoy what they do, and they become part of the family. They may not have any other people, to deal with, so they want to stay with them, and so they can become a permanent slave. And they have to, it's kind of like one and done. Once you decide that, then, okay, the master takes an awl. You know what an awl is? It's kind of like an ice pick. only a wooden ice pick, puts it through their earlobe, makes an earring hole, like we were talking about earlier, makes a hole in their ear, and people know that person's a slave. And that person is this guy that's a slave. Who knows, they may put something, I don't know if they put anything in it, or it doesn't say anything about that, to identify them. Now the pagans, when they had slaves, they would brand them. Put a little, their initial, whatever it was, or symbol, or something on them, to show that they were theirs. And of course, in the pagans, they tried to get out. Here, you got a slave that wants to be a servant of this guy. He's treating him just like family, so he wants to stay there. And it's whether it's, a male or a female. They have both servants in their house. It says Jesus is the great fulfillment of this willing slave. Jesus said prophetically in Psalms 40 and 6, "My ears you have opened." It speaks of this opening of the ear in the bond slave ceremony. He was the willing bond slave of God the Father. Isaiah 50:5-7 also shows that Jesus' character as the willing slave was most perfectly shown in his suffering at the cross. "Lord God has opened my ear, and I was not rebellious, nor did I turn away. I gave my back to those who struck me, and my cheeks to those who plucked out the beard. I did not hide my face from shame and spitting, for the Lord God will help me. Therefore I will not be disgraced. Therefore I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I will not be ashamed." In the New Testament, it talks of the word, the common New Testament word was doulos, which described this type of slave, a slave for a bondservant. Paul talked about being that, a bondservant of the Lord. And many of the others did also. It said among the Greeks, with their strong sense of personal freedom, the term carried a degrading connotation because they wanted to be free. Remember when Paul said he was a Roman citizen? That meant that he was free. He didn't have to go out and serve, as anybody's slave or anything like that. He was a free man. Deuteronomy 15 on page 14. 15 and 19 is the firstborn principle. "All the firstborn males that come from your herd and your flock you shall sanctify to the Lord your God. You shall do no work with the firstborn of your herd, nor shear the firstborn of your flock." Now we talked about they're going to be given to God, earlier. Now it's specifying, set them aside. These are going to be offerings made to the Lord. So don't do your regular work with them. They are going to be given to the Lord. Set them aside, these firstborn males that come from the herd. Again, sanctify means to set apart. Just if you're holy, that's again set apart. And the firstborn, as again goes back to the 10th plague, the firstborn of they were honored because they were saved. Second, because the firstborn was thought to be the best. It was the one that received the blessing, the double blessing that was given in those days. And finally, it's to be a reminder of all generations when God redeemed Israel, which was his firstborn. Okay? I think that's the last one. Yeah, I'll read the last one. "You and your household," talking about the firstborn before, "shall eat it before the Lord your God, year by year, in the place which the Lord chooses. But if there is a defect in it, if it is lame or blind or has any serious defect," this is talking about the firstborn, "you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You may eat it within your gates. The unclean and the clean person alike may eat it, as if it were a gazelle or a deer. Only you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it on the ground like water." So, again, just throwing in a little other portion of that firstborn of the flock, it's going to be given to the Lord. They have to give part of it to the Lord, but they can still eat it unless it has some kind of beer. And not all the firstborns was perfect. We know that. I mean, animals, we,
Well,
I don't,
it was not just the firstborn baby, it's the firstborn, animal, right?
yeah, animal also. The firstborn child is redeemed, okay? We talked about that too, back in those times. But we've been, since the pandemic, there've been a lot of people kicking chickens, you know, and we on our Facebook page, there's all kinds of people there have all kinds of problems with chickens, and Darla's like, I didn't know they had so many problems. I said, it's an animal. All animals have problems of some sort or another. You don't have a perfect animal. You gotta take them to the doctor, you gotta do this, gotta do that. So the chickens, they don't just automatically lay eggs.
Dog.
Oh yeah, they had dogs, they had,
But the dogs didn't bring anything.
no, they weren't domesticated, what I'd
Oh,
say.
okay.
I mean, they had some, the pagans had some, but they didn't keep dogs like we keep
Ah.
dogs today. I don't think anybody does. Only the Americans do.
Anyway.
And that's about it for tonight,
I
so.
noticed when we were in Vietnam, if you fatten the dog up over there, it soon
It disappeared.
disappeared, yeah.
Yeah,
Ended up in somebody's pot.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Well, appreciate everybody coming.
Thank you.
Thank